The rain came down in sheets that Monday afternoon, the kind of cold, relentless downpour that seeps into your bones and makes you question every life choice that led you to this moment. I was exhausted, my shoulders aching from cataloging a shipment of 19th century correspondence all day at the museum. All I wanted was to collapse into my bed, maybe heat up some leftover pasta, and lose myself in a documentary about Victorian architecture. Instead, I came home to find my vintage drafting table, the one I'd spent 6 months hunting down at estate sales, another 3 months painstakingly restoring with my own hands, lying on its side in the front yard like discarded trash. I could see it from my car, the water pooling in the hand-carved grooves I'd spent hours cleaning with a toothbrush. My heart dropped into my stomach. I hadn't even put the car in park when I saw her. Paisley, my sister, standing by my bedroom window with her phone held up at that insufferable angle, filming herself with that practiced smile she'd perfected for her 250 followers. Hey dreamers, it's Paisley here and, oh you guys, I have the most amazing announcement. Her voice carried across the wet lawn, artificially bright and energetic. We're finally creating the perfect space for baby Ember's arrival, and let me tell you, the natural light in this room is just chef's kiss. My hands were shaking as I threw the car into park, not from the cold, though my thin cardigan was already soaked through from the 30-second sprint from the museum parking lot to my car. No, I was shaking with a rage so pure, so absolute, that it felt like electricity coursing through my veins. I grabbed my bag and ran toward the house, my shoes squelching in the muddy lawn. As I passed the drafting table, I could see the damage up close. The joints I'd so carefully reglued were separating. The finish was ruined. Months of work, destroyed in an afternoon. What is going on? I burst through the front door, water dripping from my hair onto the hardwood floors I'd helped refinish 2 summers ago. My mother, Pamela, was standing in the living room, arms crossed, wearing that expression I'd come to know so well, the one that said she'd already decided I was being unreasonable before I'd even opened my mouth. "Audrey, you're making a scene," she said, her voice clipped. "Come inside properly and close the door. You're letting the cold in." My drafting table is outside in the rain. My voice cracked, and I hated myself for it. My table, Mom, the one I've been restoring for months. It's ruined. "Well, we had to make room," she said, as if this explained everything. Paisley needs space for the nursery setup, and that table was taking up so much room, we couldn't move around it. I stared at her, water still dripping from my clothes, forming a puddle on the floor. "Make room? In my bedroom? That's my room, Mom. My private space. The space I pay for." "Don't be dramatic," she waved her hand dismissively. "It's just a room, and technically, your father and I own this house." The words hung in the air between us. Technically. As if the $1,500 I'd transferred to their account every single month for the past 3 years was just a suggestion. As if the $10,000 I'd spent renovating the attic into a usable studio was pocket change. Let me back up. You need to understand what I sacrificed to be standing in this house at all. 3 years ago, my father, Arthur, made what he called aggressive investments in a commercial property development that went belly up. The details were murky. Dad never was good with numbers, despite his inflated confidence, but the result was crystal clear. The house was heavily mortgaged and underwater by about $40,000. The bank sent foreclosure notices. My mother cried for weeks. I was living in a decent apartment near the museum then, sharing it with a roommate who respected boundaries and actually paid her half of the utilities on time. I had savings. I had peace. I had a life that made sense. But I'm an archivist. I preserve things. I restore order from chaos. It's not just what I do, it's who I am. And the thought of my childhood home flawed as it was being seized by a bank, of my parents becoming one of those cautionary tales people whisper about at dinner parties, I couldn't let it happen. So I moved back. I negotiated a deal, $1,500 a month, which they called rent, but which we all knew went directly to the mortgage payment. I took the attic, that dusty, cramped space filled with Christmas decorations and boxes of my mother's college textbooks that she'd never opened in 30 years. I spent $10,000 of my carefully hoarded savings to transform it. I installed a skylight to bring in natural light. I laid warm oak flooring over the rough plywood. I soundproofed the walls, because archival work requires absolute concentration, one misplaced date, one incorrectly attributed document, and months of research can crumble. I made it beautiful. I made it mine. It was my sanctuary, the only place in this house where I could breathe, and for 3 years it worked. I paid my $1,500 every month, always on time, always without complaint. I watched my savings account dwindle. I turned down dinner invitations because I couldn't afford both the mortgage contribution and a social life. I made it work because that's what you do for family. That's what I thought family meant. Then Paisley showed up. 6 months ago, she arrived with Jace, her husband, though I still thought of him as Kyle from high school, the guy who'd been mediocre at basketball, and even more mediocre at life decisions. He'd lost their condo when his cryptocurrency investments, because of course he was into crypto, collapsed spectacularly. They needed a place to stay. Temporarily, my mother assured me. Just until they got back on their feet, Paisley had reinvented herself, again. She'd gone from Jessica to Paisley because it was more memorable for branding. She'd been a failed mommy blogger with her first kid, Brayden, generating content that maybe 12 people read, most of them spam bots. Now she was pregnant with baby number 2, Ember, apparently, and convinced that this time, she'd crack the algorithm and become an influencer. All she needed was the perfect backdrop, the perfect aesthetic, the perfect natural light, my room, my sanctuary, my skylight. I'd seen it coming. The way she'd started appearing in the attic doorway, phone in hand, casually filming. Just getting some B-roll, she'd say with that fake sweet smile. The way she'd comment on how the light hit the oak flooring, how the exposed beams were so rustic chic. But I didn't think even she would be this brazen. I took the stairs 2 at a time, my wet shoes leaving prints on the carpet runner. The door to my room was wide open. Paisley was standing in the middle of the space, her hand resting on her pregnant belly, in that performative way she had, directing Jace as he moved my bookshelf. No, babe, angle it more to the left. The books need to be visible in the frame but not overwhelming, you know? We want cozy, not cluttered. She was filming herself in the mirror, making that duck face pout that had gone out of style 5 years ago. My desk was shoved against the wall, papers scattered across the floor, my carefully organized filing system demolished. The skylight I'd installed, the one I'd specifically chosen to reduce glare for archival work, was now illuminated with one of those ring lights influencers use, casting harsh shadows across the room. "What are you doing?" My voice came out strangled. Paisley turned, her smile not faltering for a second. "Audrey, perfect timing. We're doing a room transformation reveal tomorrow. Isn't it exciting? The algorithm loves before and afters. Get out." "Oh, don't be like that." She lowered her phone, finally, but her expression remained infuriatingly serene. "Mom said it was fine. And honestly, Audrey, you're never even here during the day. You're always at that dusty museum. I need this space for content creation." It's basically a business investment. Jace had the decency to look uncomfortable, at least. He set down the bookshelf and shrugged apologetically. "Sorry, Audrey, but Paisley says the light here is the most aesthetic. Consider it an investment in your sister's startup. When the channel takes off, we'll get our own place, and you can have the room back." An investment in my sister's startup, with my space, my light, my sanctuary. I turned and walked back downstairs, Paisley's voice trailing after me. "Audrey, don't be childish. This is good for the whole family." My parents were waiting in the living room. Dad was sitting in his recliner, the TV playing some news program he wasn't watching. Mom stood with her arms still crossed, her jaw set in that stubborn way that meant she'd already made up her mind. "I want my room back," I said flatly. "Now." "Audrey, your sister is pregnant," Mom said, as if this was a trump card that nullified all logic. "She needs positive energy. She needs a beautiful space to create content so she can make money for her family. You're single, you don't have children. What's wrong with sleeping in the living room for a few months? I looked at my father, Arthur Moore, the man who'd bounced checks and made disastrous investments and buried us under crushing debt, the man whose mortgage I'd been paying for 3 years. Surely he would say something. Surely he would defend me. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Family helps family, Audrey. He mumbled, still staring at the TV. When your sister's YouTube channel makes money, she'll give the room back. We all have to make sacrifices. Sacrifices. I'd sacrificed my savings, my apartment, my independence. I'd sacrificed my peace of mind, my social life, 3 years of my life, and they wanted more. They wanted me to sleep on the lumpy sofa, the one with the broken spring that dug into your back, while I continued to pay $1,500 a month, while Paisley filmed her delusions in my sanctuary, while Jace the crypto bro lounged around eating the groceries I bought, while my parents nodded along, enabling it all. In that moment, standing in the living room with water still dripping from my clothes, looking at my father's averted eyes and my mother's expectant expression, I understood the truth with perfect clarity. They didn't see me as a daughter. They saw me as an ATM with a heartbeat. "Fine," I said, my voice colder than I'd ever heard it. "I'm leaving." My mother actually laughed. "Leaving? To go where, Audrey? A hotel? Don't be childish. You'll waste money out of spite and come crawling back in a week." I didn't answer. I walked past her, up the stairs one final time. I grabbed my laptop from under a pile of her maternity clothes. I took my important documents, birth certificate, passport, the deed to my car. I pulled a suitcase from the closet and threw in enough clothes for a week. I had a 2-day conference to attend. After that, I'd come back and find a decent place of my own. "Audrey, seriously, you're being so dramatic?" Paisley called as I zipped the suitcase. "It's just a room. Why do you always have to make everything about you?" I looked at her. Really looked at her. At the sister who'd borrowed money and never paid it back. Who'd forgotten my birthday 3 years running. Who'd named her children Brayden and Ember and thought she was being creative. "Enjoy the room," I said quietly. "I hope it gets you all the views you deserve." I walked out. Down the stairs, past my mother's shocked face, past my father who still couldn't look at me, out the front door into the rain, which had finally started to let up. My drafting table was still on the lawn, ruined, because it was in the way of someone's selfie backdrop. I loaded my suitcase into the trunk of my 10-year-old Honda and drove away. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't stay. Behind me, in the house I'd saved from foreclosure, my family was probably already moving on, already forgetting, already assuming I'd come back, because that's what I always did. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, as I drove through the dark, rainy streets with nowhere to go, was that while I was packing my bags in tears, they were already online shopping. Using my credit card.
The in-law suite at Mrs. Thorne's house smelled like old books and lavender. It was small, a bedroom, a bathroom, and a kitchenette that was really just a hot plate and a mini fridge, but it was clean, and it was quiet, and most importantly, it was mine. I'd found the listing on a community board at the museum the morning after I left. Mrs. Eleanor Thorne, retired literature teacher, 82 years old, with steel gray hair pulled back in a neat bun, and eyes that missed nothing. She'd looked at me standing on her doorstep with my single suitcase and said, "Running from something or towards something?" "Both," I'd answered honestly. She'd nodded once, quoted me a fair price, and handed me the keys. "Rent is due on the 1st, no exceptions, no drama. No overnight guests without notice. If you're going to fall apart, do it quietly." It was the most comforting speech I'd ever heard. For a week, I existed in a strange, peaceful limbo. I blocked my mother's number, then Paisley's, then Dad's, then Jace's. I went to work at the museum, where the silence was companionable rather than judgmental, where the documents I cataloged stayed exactly where I put them and didn't get tossed onto a lawn in the rain. I ate simple meals in my kitchenette. I slept in a bed that was mine alone, in a room with a door that locked. I breathed. I thought the silence, the absence of my $1,500 monthly payment would be punishment enough. I imagined my parents scrambling to cover the mortgage, panicking as they realized how much they'd relied on me. I imagined them feeling regret. I should have known better. I should have remembered who I was dealing with, but I underestimated their audacity, their greed, their absolute conviction that I existed solely to solve their problems. Exactly 1 week later, Tuesday morning arrived cold and bright. I was at the museum, working in the climate-controlled archive room, where we kept the most fragile documents. There's something meditative about archival work, the careful handling, the precise notation, the way each piece of paper tells a story if you know how to listen. My phone rang, unknown number. I almost didn't answer. My personal calls came through my blocked family trying to reach me from different numbers, but something made me pick up. Hello, this is Sebastian from the Gilded Crib. I'm calling to confirm the Royal Nursery Collection order totaling $15,500. The file folder I'd been holding slipped from my fingers, papers scattering across the table. Excuse me? What order? The nursery furniture order. His voice was professional but slightly concerned now, probably picking up on my shock. Customer Paisley Nash placed the order yesterday for expedited delivery. Given the rush nature of this request, she specified she needs everything delivered today for a room reveal video tomorrow. We had to transfer all floor models from our neighboring district branch. The total charge to your Amex Platinum is $15,500, which includes the $1,200 expedited handling fee. My vision went dark at the edges. I grabbed the edge of the table to steady myself. $15,500, so Paisley could have her content, so she could film her room reveal. So she could pretend to be a successful influencer for her 250 followers. Ma'am, are you still there? Sebastian's voice had shifted to concern. Is there a problem with the order? My mind was racing, fitting pieces together with the same methodical precision I used for archival work. I'm careful with my data, obsessively careful. I use password managers, I enable two-factor authentication, I never save payment information, except the memory hit me like ice water. That day, the day I left. My laptop had frozen during a Windows update right when I needed to book a last-minute flight for a museum conference. I'd been panicking, exhausted, my hands still shaking from the confrontation. I'd used my parents' desktop computer in the living room, the family computer that everyone used. I'd booked the flight in a hurry, not thinking clearly, and I'd forgotten to uncheck the box, the one that said, Save payment information for faster checkout. My Amex Platinum information, stored in the browser's autofill, sitting there like a present, wrapped and waiting. They must have seen it. Probably my mother, or Paisley herself. And they'd thought, why not? Audrey owes us. Audrey abandoned the family. Audrey can afford it. She works at a museum. She must have money. And anyway, she won't call the police. We're family. They thought I was an ATM, an emotionless infinite source of money that they could withdraw from at will. Ma'am? Sebastian's voice was more insistent now. I need to confirm. Listen to me very carefully, I said, my voice cutting through the shock with sudden clarity. What time is the delivery scheduled? Our truck is actually in the neighborhood now. I'm driving out personally to oversee the delivery since this is a VIP rush order. In the neighborhood, right now, unloading over $15,000 worth of furniture onto the property I'd saved from foreclosure, using money they'd stolen from me. This wasn't borrowing. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft. Unauthorized access device fraud, identity theft, actual crimes with actual legal consequences. Sebastian, I said, my voice steady now, controlled. Do not unload anything onto the property. Do not let anyone sign for delivery. Hold the scene exactly as it is. I'm coming there right now to settle this. Ma'am, the customer is expecting... The customer committed fraud, I interrupted. That's my credit card. I didn't place this order. Someone stole my card information that was saved on my family's computer. If you unload that furniture, I will be filing a police report for theft, and your store will be part of the investigation. Do you understand? There was a pause. Then Sebastian's voice came back, professional mask firmly in place, but with an edge of steel underneath. I understand completely. We'll wait for your arrival. May I have your estimated time? I looked at my watch. The museum was 20 minutes from my parents' house. 25 minutes. Don't let anyone touch that truck. I hung up and stood there for a moment in the archive room, surrounded by centuries of carefully preserved documents. History preserved, chaos organized, truth documented. I'd spent my whole life preserving things, restoring order, taking care of everyone else. It was time to preserve myself. I grabbed my coat and my keys. My hands were steady now. My mind was clear. I'd thought leaving was the end of the story. I'd thought my silence and the missing mortgage payment would be enough. I was wrong. This wasn't the end. This was the beginning. And I was going to make sure they understood exactly what they'd done. The drive to my parents' house felt like diving headfirst into a nightmare I couldn't wake from. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white, and every traffic light that turned red felt like the universe was giving them more time to complete their theft. I kept checking my phone at every stop, refreshing my bank app obsessively, watching that pending charge sit there like a tumor. $15,500. The number didn't get smaller. It didn't disappear. It just mocked me. When I finally turned onto the street I'd grown up on, the street where I'd learned to ride a bike and scraped my knees on the sidewalk, I saw it. The massive delivery truck from the gilded crib was already there, parked in front of the house like some kind of grotesque parade float. The engine was still rumbling, diesel fumes mixing with the scent of freshly cut grass from the neighbor's lawn. My stomach dropped. I slammed on the brakes and threw my car into park halfway down the block, not even caring that I was blocking Mrs. Henderson's mailbox. Through my windshield, I could see Paisley in the front yard, her pregnant belly protruding as she gestured wildly at the delivery staff. She was pointing at the truck, then at the house, her mouth moving rapidly. Even from this distance, I could see the entitled impatience radiating off her like heat waves. She was treating these workers like servants, like people who existed solely to fulfill her Instagram-worthy fantasy. I got out of the car and started walking. My legs felt like they were moving through water, but my resolve was crystalline. As I got closer, I could hear her voice, shrill and demanding. "Why are you all just standing there? Open it up." "I need to see if there are any scratches. Floor models are extremely rare, you know. If there's even one nick, I'm posting a review that'll tank your ratings." One of the delivery guys, a middle-aged man with tired eyes, was trying to explain something to her, but she kept interrupting. That's when I noticed Sebastian standing near the truck's rear doors, his arms crossed, his expression professionally neutral but his body language screaming absolutely not. "Ma'am," Sebastian said, intercepting Paisley as she moved toward the truck. "We require the cardholder to sign the delivery manifest in person for high-value orders like this one."
"What?"
Paisley frowned. Then, spotting me walking toward her, she quickly pointed in my direction. Her face lit up with that fake, saccharine smile she always used when she wanted something. "Audrey! Oh, thank heavens you're here." She clasped her hands together like she was greeting a long-lost friend instead of the sister she'd kicked out in the rain a week ago. "Tell them to unload everything. They're being so difficult, saying they need to verify something. Watch out for scratches. These pieces are investment quality." The audacity, the sheer, breathtaking audacity of it made bile rise in my throat. She stood there, belly swollen with a baby she couldn't afford, demanding furniture bought with my stolen money, acting like I was late to help her move in, like nothing had happened. Like the attic, the rain, my soaking wet drafting table, like none of it mattered. I didn't look at her. I walked straight past her as if she were invisible, heading directly to Sebastian. The delivery staff parted from me instinctively, sensing the shift in the air. Sebastian's eyes met mine, and I saw the slight nod of recognition. "I am Audrey Moore," I said, my voice clear and loud enough for the entire neighborhood to hear. "I am the cardholder on American Express account ending in 7,743. I did not authorize this transaction." The words hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Paisley's smile faltered. "What? Audrey, don't be dramatic." "I did not authorize this transaction," I repeated, turning to face her directly for the first time. "And I'm reporting it as fraud." The color drained from her face. "You're joking. This is a joke, right? We talked about this. You said—" I said no such thing. My voice was ice. "You stole my credit card information from Mom and Dad's computer and made a $15,000 purchase without my knowledge or consent." Mom came rushing out, still wearing her gardening gloves, dirt smudged on her khaki capris. Her face was a mask of panic poorly disguised as maternal concern. "Audrey, sweetheart, come inside. Let's talk about this privately. You're making a scene in front of the neighbors." There it was, The same manipulation tactic she'd used my entire life. The fear of judgment, the terror of what people might think. The unspoken rule that family business stayed behind closed doors, no matter how toxic or abusive that business might be. But something had shifted in me during those days at Mrs. Thorne's apartment. Something had broken free. Or maybe something had finally healed. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and saw not the authority figure who'd shaped my childhood, but a middle-aged woman desperately clinging to appearances while her world crumbled around her. "No," I said simply. Her eyes widened. She wasn't used to that word from me. Nobody in this family was. I pulled out my phone, already unlocked to my recent calls list. I'd prepared for this moment. I hit the dial button for the fraud support line I'd saved earlier. Then I did something that made my mother's face go pale. I switched it to speakerphone and turned the volume all the way up. The ringing sound cut through the suburban afternoon quiet like a siren. Once. Twice. 3 times. Mrs. Henderson was probably watching from her window. The delivery guys stood frozen, sensing they were witnessing something that went far beyond a simple delivery dispute. Bank of America Fraud Support Line. This is Jennifer speaking. How can I help you today? The voice came through crystal clear, professional, and neutral. My mother reached for my phone, but I stepped back, holding it away from her. "Yes, hello," I said, my eyes locked on my mother's face. "I need to report a fraudulent transaction on my American Express Platinum card. My account was compromised through an unsecured device. The fraudster used my saved credentials to make an unauthorized online purchase. I confirm that I did not make this transaction, did not authorize anyone to use my account, and I'm reporting this as identity theft." The words felt powerful. Each syllable was a nail in the coffin of their entitlement. "I see," Jennifer said, her tone shifting to brisk efficiency. "Can you confirm the card number and the transaction in question?" I rattled off the details while staring at my mother. Pamela's face had gone from pink to white to a sickly gray. She turned toward the house, looking for backup, for the man who'd supposedly built this family. "Arthur!" she called out, her voice cracking. "Arthur, get out here!" The front door opened slowly. My father emerged, but he didn't come down the steps. He stood on the porch, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders hunched. He looked at the scene before him, the delivery truck, the frozen workers, his wife's desperate face, Paisley's shocked expression, and me, his eldest daughter, standing in his driveway reporting his family for fraud. Our eyes met. I saw the calculation happening behind his pale blue eyes. He was weighing his options, measuring the consequences. For one brief moment, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd do the right thing. He'd admit what happened. He'd try to fix this. Instead, my father did the most cowardly thing I'd ever witnessed. He lowered his head, turned his back on all of us, walked inside the house, and shut the door. Not a slam that would have required passion, anger, some kind of emotion, just a quiet, definitive click of the lock. He'd abandoned his wife and daughter to face the consequences of their actions alone. The man who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd helped with my math homework, who'd walked me through my first museum interview prep, that man chose his own comfort over standing by his family in their moment of crisis. Something inside my chest cracked, but it wasn't breaking. It was the final piece of obligation falling away. "Miss Moore?" Jennifer's voice pulled me back. "Are you still there?" "Yes, I'm here. I've located the transaction. $15,500 charged to the Gilded Crib, processed last week. I'm initiating a fraud investigation immediately. We'll freeze the card, cancel the transaction, and reverse the charge within 3 to 5 business days. You'll receive a new card within 7 to 10 days. Is there anything else you need to report?" "That's everything. Thank you. A fraud specialist will contact you within 24 hours for a detailed statement. Thank you for reporting this promptly, Miss Moore." I ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. Sebastian cleared his throat. "Given the circumstances, I'm recalling this delivery." He signaled to his team with a professional hand gesture. "This order is cancelled." The delivery staff, clearly relieved to be doing something instead of standing in the middle of a family implosion. That's when Paisley lost it. "No, no, no, no." She rushed toward the truck, but Sebastian stepped smoothly into her path. "You can't take it. This is mine. I spent weeks planning the nursery." "Do you have any idea how hard it is to find floor models in that exact shade of sage?" "Ma'am, The cardholder has reported fraud. We cannot complete this delivery. I'm having a baby, Paisley shrieked, her voice climbing to a register I didn't know was humanly possible. You're all ruining everything. My followers are expecting the nursery reveal. This is sabotage. I watched her melt down with a strange sense of detachment. She wasn't crying over betraying me. She wasn't apologizing for stealing. She was devastated about losing furniture. About her Instagram content schedule. About her imaginary influencer career that existed only in her delusional mind. Audrey, please. Mom tried one more time, her voice barely a whisper now. Think about your nephew. Think about family. I turned to look at her, really look at her. I saw the fine lines around her eyes, the gray roots showing beneath her dyed blonde hair, the dirt under her fingernails from her garden. I saw a woman who'd chosen her younger daughter's fantasy over her older daughter's reality, again and again and again. I did think about family, I said quietly. For 3 years I paid you $1,500 a month. I renovated that attic with $10,000 of my own money. I made myself smaller and quieter and more convenient, so Paisley could be loud and demanding and take up all the space. I thought about family every single day. The delivery truck's engine roared to life. The workers were moving quickly, probably wanting to escape this suburban nightmare. But you didn't think about me, I continued. Not when you gave away my room, not when you kicked me out, not when you stole my credit card. So no, Mom, I'm done thinking about this family. You should have thought about me. I walked back to my car without looking back. Behind me, I could hear Paisley still screaming, her voice raw and desperate. I could hear Mom trying to shush her, worried about the neighbors. I could hear the truck pulling away, taking with it the last evidence of their attempted theft. I got in my car, started the engine, and for the first time in 3 years, I felt powerful.
The drive back to Mrs. Thorne's apartment was a blur. My hands were shaking so badly I had to pull over twice just to breathe. The adrenaline that had sustained me through the confrontation was draining away, leaving behind a trembling, hollow feeling. But underneath that hollowness was something else, something solid and real. I'd done it. I'd actually done it. When I finally made it back to the in-law suite, Mrs. Thorne was waiting on her back porch with 2 glasses of tea, as if she'd somehow known exactly when I'd return. Her salt and pepper hair was pulled back in its usual neat bun, her reading glasses perched on her nose, a worn paperback resting on the side table next to her wicker chair. "Well?" she asked as I climbed the steps, her sharp eyes taking in my flushed face and shaking hands. I gave her a brief rundown of what had just happened. The truck drove away empty, I said, and then, unexpectedly, I started laughing. Not hysterical laughter, but something cleaner. Relief, maybe. My dad literally walked inside and locked the door. Just abandoned them. Mrs. Thorne's lips twitched. The patriarch reveals himself to be made of paper. How Shakespearean. She handed me the iced tea. Drink, then tell me what happens next. Next? I sank into the chair beside her. Child, you've just humiliated them in front of their neighbors and canceled their stolen goods. Do you think they're going to simply accept that and move on with their lives? She was right, of course. Mrs. Thorne was always right. I didn't have to wait long to find out exactly how right she was. The first text came 20 minutes later, while I was trying to eat a sandwich I couldn't taste. It was from Mom. "We need to talk. Call me." I stared at it, read it. Set my phone face down on the kitchen counter. 10 minutes later, "Audrey, you're being childish. Your sister is devastated. Call me." I took a bite of sandwich, chewed, swallowed. Didn't pick up the phone. By evening, my phone was exploding. Texts from Mom, texts from Paisley. Even a text from Jace, which was remarkable, considering he'd barely strung 3 words together in my presence over the past 2 years. "Dude, this is really messed up. Can we just talk?" I read every single one. The little read receipt showed up under each message. And then I did absolutely nothing. Mrs. Thorne had gone to her weekly book club, leaving me alone with my buzzing phone and racing thoughts. I knew what they were expecting. They were waiting for me to crack, to feel guilty, to come crawling back with apologies and an open wallet. That's what I'd always done before. but I'd learned something important during my years as a museum archivist. Patience is a weapon. The best way to preserve something fragile is to remove it from harmful elements and wait. Time reveals everything. So, I waited. By the next morning, they'd changed tactics. When I checked my phone over coffee, I found that Paisley had posted on her page. My finger hovered over the notification for a long moment before I opened it. The post was a masterpiece of manipulation. I don't usually air family business online, but I'm at my breaking point. Yesterday, my own aunt. Yes, my sister, but she's old enough to be my aunt. Lowell deliberately sabotaged the nursery furniture delivery for my baby boy. I spent weeks carefully selecting each piece for his arrival, and she called the company and canceled everything out of spite. I'm currently in the ER being monitored for stress-induced complications. The doctors say the baby's heart rate is elevated, all because someone couldn't be happy for me. I'm shaking as I type this. Please send love. The post had been up for 6 hours and already had 43 comments, mostly from her sparse follower list, people from high school, distant relatives, mom's church friends. They were all variations of, "Oh my God, that's terrible," and "Some people are just jealous," and "Thinking of you and baby." Mom had commented too. "My heart is broken. I raised both my daughters to love each other, but sometimes you realize you've been nurturing a snake in your bosom, hoping my grandson survives this stress." A snake. She'd called me a snake. I felt my face go hot. My first instinct was to defend myself, to write a comment explaining what actually happened, to expose their theft publicly. I opened the comment box and started typing. Then I stopped. Mrs. Thorne's voice echoed in my head from a conversation we'd had days ago when I'd been upset about something Paisley had posted. "Never wrestle with a pig, dear. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it." I deleted the half-written comment, set down my phone. If I engaged, I'd look defensive. Defensive people look guilty. Instead, I'd let them scream into the void while I quietly built my case. The texts continued throughout the day. "Mom, 9:47 a.m. Paisley is really in the hospital. Her blood pressure is dangerously high. Is this what you wanted? Mom, 11:23 a.m. Your father won't even look at me. You've destroyed this family. Mom, 2:15 p.m. If you don't want to be disowned by everyone who matters, come home and apologize to your sister. We can renegotiate the furniture money. We're reasonable people." Ah, there it was. Renegotiate. They still thought this was a negotiation. They still believed that eventually, I'd cave, and they'd get some version of what they wanted. I read each message, and I typed nothing back. This silence was deliberate, calculated. It was a trap, and they were walking right into it. While Paisley posted increasingly dramatic updates, apparently she was now emotionally traumatized and seeking therapy. While Mom sent texts that alternated between guilt-tripping and bribery, I was busy doing something much more productive. I was working with the bank. The fraud specialist, a woman named Karen with a no-nonsense voice, called me on Thursday afternoon. I sat at Mrs. Thorne's kitchen table with my laptop open, a notebook filled with dates and details, and walked her through everything. "So you had your credit card information saved on their computer?" Karen asked. "Yes, I used it once, about 2 weeks ago, to book a flight for a business trip while I was still living there. I must have checked Remember Me without thinking. I didn't realize my credentials would stay saved after I moved out." "And you're certain you didn't authorize this purchase?" "Completely certain. I've moved out of their house. I had no knowledge of this purchase until I saw the pending charge on my account." When I confronted them, they admitted my sister had made the purchase using the saved information. Did they attempt to justify it? They claimed it was a family loan, but I never agreed to loan anyone anything. They took my information without permission and made a $15,000 purchase. That's not a loan, that's theft. Karen was quiet for a moment, and I could hear typing. "Miss Moore, I'm going to be frank with you. This case has moved beyond simple credit card fraud. Based on your statement and the evidence the IP address matches your parents' residence, The timing coincides with when you weren't present. And you've provided clear documentation of your move-out date. This is unauthorized access device fraud. That's a federal crime. My stomach flipped. Federal? Yes, we're required to report it. I need you to understand that once this investigation is complete, there may be legal consequences for the individuals involved. I thought about Paisley's Facebook post, her fake ER visit, Mom's comments calling me a snake. I thought about Dad walking inside and locking the door. I thought about my drafting table in the rain. I understand, I said. I want to proceed. All right, I'll need you to file a formal police report as well. Take this case number to your local police station and file a report for identity theft. Once we have that, we can finalize the investigation. After we hung up, I sat at the table for a long time, staring at my notes. The case number was written in blue ink at the top of the page, 2024F, R884021. It felt real now. Heavy, irreversible. Mrs. Thorne came home around 6, carrying a bag of groceries and a stack of library books. She took one look at my face and set everything down. "Tea?" she asked. "Please." We sat together in her small, neat kitchen while the kettle heated. I told her about the call with Karen, about the police report I'd need to file, about the words federal crime hanging in the air like smoke. "You're having second thoughts, Mrs. Thorne observed. It wasn't a question. Shouldn't I be? I wrapped my hands around the warm mug she'd placed in front of me. I mean, this could really hurt them. What if Paisley loses the baby from stress? What if Dad loses his job? What if— "Stop!" Mrs. Thorne's voice was sharp. "Listen to yourself. You're taking responsibility for consequences they created. They stole from you. They publicly slandered you. They would have bankrupted you without a second thought. And now you're worried about protecting them? They're my family." "No, dear." She leaned forward, her eyes fierce behind her reading glasses. "Family protects each other. Family respects boundaries. What they are is people who happen to share your DNA. There's a difference." I swallowed hard. "Everyone's going to hate me. Everyone who matters already knows the truth. And those who believe they're nonsense?" She waved a dismissive hand. "They're not your people anyway. The loudest person in the room is usually the emptiest. Your sister is screaming on social media because she knows deep down, she knows that she's wrong. Your mother is crying family because it's the only card she has left to play. But you're playing chess while they're playing checkers." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. Every tantrum they throw, every lie they post, every attempt to manipulate you, it all creates a trail, a record. When this goes to investigation, who's going to look credible? The woman who calmly reported fraud and cooperated with authorities? Or the people having public meltdowns and trying to rewrite history on social media?" She was right. Of course she was right. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Mom. "The bank called me today asking questions. I told them it was all a family misunderstanding. You need to call them back and withdraw the report. This has gone far enough, Audrey. I showed the screen to Mrs. Thorne." She read it and actually smiled. Oh, how delightful. She just incriminated herself. What? She admitted the bank called her for verification. That means they've confirmed the transaction originated from her location. And by claiming it was a family misunderstanding instead of denying knowledge entirely, she's confirmed that she knew about the purchase. She's trying to minimize it, but what she's actually doing is confessing. "Mrs. Thorne set down her teacup with a satisfied clink. "Your mother just turned herself from an unwitting accomplice into a knowing participant." I stared at the text message with new eyes. Mom thought she was being clever, thought she was shutting down the investigation. Instead, she'd just handed the bank exactly what they needed to prove this wasn't an accident or a misunderstanding, it was deliberate fraud. "They think they're winning," I said slowly. "They think they're winning, Mrs. Thorne agreed, "which means they'll keep making mistakes, keep being loud, keep creating evidence, all while you stay quiet and let the system work." I didn't respond to Mom's text. I saved it as a screenshot instead, filed it in a folder on my laptop labeled Evidence, and watched the sun set through Mrs. Thorne's kitchen window. Somewhere across town, my family was probably gathered in the living room, celebrating their victory. Mom had fixed the bank problem. Paisley was probably already back on her phone, planning her next post. Dad was likely in his recliner, relieved to not be involved. They had no idea that the trap had already closed around them. They were just too busy dancing to notice they were caught.
The consequences didn't arrive with a loud bang. They came with the cold, clinical collapse of numbers, a slow-motion disaster. My mother's credit score wouldn't even survive the season. The collapse, when it came, was swift and merciless. I heard about it in pieces, fragments of information that filtered through Aunt Caroline, Dad's sister, who'd always been kind to me in that careful way people are when they know something's wrong but don't want to interfere. Your mother tried to refinance. Caroline told me over coffee at a diner halfway between our homes. She'd reached out asking to meet, and I'd agreed mostly out of curiosity. They were going to do a cash-out refinance to pay off their credit cards. Apparently things have been tight since you moved out. I said nothing. The vintage drafting table flashed through my mind, its beautiful wood grain soaking in the rain, rivulets running off its carved legs. The mortgage payment is due in 2 weeks. Caroline continued, without the refinance, without your contribution, they can't make it. Arthur finally looked at the actual numbers. Audrey, they have almost no equity. The house is basically underwater. Caroline sighed. You know your father, all those opportunities he invested in over the years, the tech startup that went under, that multi-level marketing thing. He took out a home equity line of credit 5 years ago and never told Pamela the full amount. Between that and the original mortgage, they owe nearly everything the house is worth. They're going to lose it, aren't they? I asked. They listed it yesterday, short sale. The realtor says they might clear $10,000 after paying off both loans if they're lucky. Caroline reached across the table, touching my hand. I know things are complicated between you all, but I thought you should know. I didn't feel what I expected to feel. There was no surge of triumph, no gloating satisfaction. Instead, there was just a strange, hollow release, like setting down a weight I'd carried so long, I'd forgotten it was there. That evening, I sat in my room at Mrs. Thorne's, the space that had become more home in 2 months than that attic had been in 3 years. The walls were cream-colored, the furniture simple but sturdy. Through the window, I could see Mrs. Thorne's garden, where the last roses of the season bloomed in defiant splendor. My laptop was open to a real estate listing. The Moore family home, photographed in golden afternoon light that made it look warm and inviting. The listing price was aggressive $30,000 below market value. Motivated seller, the description read, quick, close, possible. I wondered if the photographer had captured the attic, my attic, the skylight I'd installed myself, the built-in shelves I'd measured and sanded and painted. All of it about to belong to someone else, someone who would never know what it had cost. My phone buzzed, a text from a number I'd deliberately not saved, though I recognized it instantly. I hope you're happy. We have to sell the house. Dad isn't talking to me anymore. You won. I read it 3 times. Each word was carefully chosen to inflict maximum guilt, a surgical strike aimed at the part of me that had spent a lifetime absorbing their pain and calling it love. The old Audrey would have called back, would have apologized, would have offered to help somehow, maybe even withdrawn the fraud report if it wasn't too late, but that Audrey had been left in the rain with the drafting table. I didn't respond. I didn't block the number either. I wanted to be able to see if they tried again, but I set my phone face down on the desk and returned to my laptop. The full story came out not through my family but through Paisley's own spectacular self-destruction. Mrs. Thorne showed me the video. She'd been doing her weekly internet browsing. She was surprisingly tech-savvy for 82 when she'd stumbled across Paisley's live stream. I thought you should see this before it gets deleted, she'd said, her expression inscrutable. The video was 47 minutes of pure chaos. Paisley sat in what I recognized as my parents' living room, her face blotchy and swollen from crying. The carefully curated background of her previous videos was gone, replaced by visible cardboard boxes and bare walls. Her pregnancy was more obvious now, her face rounder, her movements slower. I don't understand how this happened, she was saying, her voice thick with tears. We did everything right. We invested in quality. We were building a brand, building a future for our baby, and now these evil banks are destroying us over a misunderstanding. The chat scrolled past, a mix of sympathy and skepticism. What misunderstanding? Wait, are you losing the house? What happened to all that furniture you showed last month? Paisley wiped her eyes, smearing her mascara further. My own sister, filed a fraud report because Mom used her credit card for the furniture, but Mom asked permission. It was just a miscommunication, and now they've ruined Mom's credit over it, and the bank won't refinance, and we're losing everything. The chat exploded. Your mom used someone else's credit card? That's not a miscommunication, that's theft. $15,000 is a felony. I watched, transfixed, as Paisley tried to backpedal, tried to explain, tried to make the narrative work in her favor. But the damage was done. Her subscriber count displayed prominently at the top of the screen ticked downward in real time. 73 followers. 72. 71. You don't understand. Paisley sobbed. This was supposed to be our big break. The aesthetic was perfect. The engagement was starting to grow. We just needed a little more time. And now Audrey's vindictiveness has destroyed everything. We're going to be homeless. Homeless with 2 babies. Maybe get a job? Your aesthetic costs someone else $15K. That's insane. This is why nobody takes influencers seriously. The video ended with Paisley angrily shutting off the camera, but not before her voice cracked one final time. I hate her. I hate her so much. Mrs. Thorne closed the laptop gently. Well, she said, her voice dry, that's quite the confession. I sat back in my chair, processing. Paisley had done what no legal testimony, no credit report, no detective statement could do. She'd publicly admitted to the whole scheme. She'd validated every choice I'd made in that driveway, every moment I'd stood firm while they screamed. Do you feel vindicated? Mrs. Thorne asked. I thought about it. Really thought about it. No, I said finally. I feel free. The next update came from Caroline again. 3 weeks later, the house had sold. A young couple with 2 kids, moving from out of state, eager to close before the school year shifted. They'd paid the asking price, desperate for the location and the good school district. After paying off the first mortgage, the home equity line, the closing costs, and the realtor's commission, my parents walked away with $7,200. $7,200 for a house they'd lived in for 18 years, less than I'd paid them in rent, over 6 months. They'd moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in a subsidized housing complex 40 minutes away. Paisley and Jace had found a place too, a shabby rental in the suburbs, nowhere near the trendy neighborhood Paisley had always fantasized about. Paisley got a job at the supermart. Caroline told me, her tone carefully neutral. Cashier position. Jace is doing some kind of gig delivery work. The mommy blogger dream was dead. The influencer mansion was gone. The carefully curated life had crumbled like tissue paper in rain. I should have felt something. Satisfaction, maybe. Or guilt. Instead, I just felt tired. One evening, sitting in my quiet room, I pulled out the folder I'd kept from the fraud investigation. Bank statements, police reports, the copy of my original fraud claim, with its cold, clinical language describing identity theft and unauthorized transactions. I read through it all one more time, then filed it away in my desk drawer. My mother had texted one final time 2 days earlier. Your father and I are no longer speaking. I hope you realize what you've done to this family. I'd stared at that message for a long time, feeling the familiar pull of guilt try to sink its hooks into me. Then I'd remembered something Mrs. Thorne had said when I first moved in. People who blame you for the consequences of their own choices will never stop blaming you. The question is whether you'll keep accepting that blame. I deleted the message without responding. Outside my window, the autumn evening was settling in, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Somewhere across town, my parents were learning to live with the consequences of treating their daughter like an ATM with emotions. And I was here, in a room that cost me $800 a month, nearly half what I'd been paying them, with a landlady who expected nothing but rent and respect. I hadn't won anything. I'd just stopped losing. That, I was learning, was enough.